I think at some point that run finally cooled off, but it was just an insane stretch where it didn't matter what format it was, standard, expanded, he was just winning tournament after tournament, and these were big tournaments too, hundreds and hundreds of people, and he would just show up and it would just be like, oh, Jimmy won again, look at that.
Well, there's no better time to turn that hot streak back on than at the World Championships. But, you know, ideally you go into it, the first couple rounds, you sort of glide on through, get a couple of wins, and then things are going to get more difficult as the day goes on, and the records start to set the really great players apart from the rest of the pack, the players who had maybe the best reads on what the meta was going to look like. This is a scary matchup to go into the day. Obviously, for the player that wins, it's going to be a big confidence boost because you've taken out one of the best players in the world right off the bat. And, you know, on the other side, if you do lose your first round to the former world champion or to a player who's won multiple regional titles in a season.
Oh, boy. We see a Pidgey in the prizes.
Oh, dear.
All right. Sorry to cut you off, but sorry, Pidgey sighting.
Alert. There's a Pidgey. Point being, you win, you lose. It's the first round. It's going to be a good one.
Yeah, but, I mean, we do need to point out there is not a lot of room for error here at the World Championships, as we do see a Solgaleo GX in the prize cards there.
Oh my.
Perhaps signaling a Mewtwo and Mew GX deck from Robin. So it should be an interesting matchup to kick things off here at the World Championships. Jimmy Pendarvis, Robin Schulz, two of the best players in the world, fighting it out here. Round one of this event. Can't wait to see what these two players brought.
We've got the mighty Mewtwo and Mew GX up against Pidgey.
Perhaps a mismatch.
Maybe a bit, but Pidgey, we've seen Pidgey and Pidgeotto shine a bit this weekend. Pidgey certainly has a strength of heart, whereas Mewtwo and Mew have a strength of HP and attack damage and pretty much everything else.
Yes. Of course, you're trying to evolve into that Pidgeotto with the excellent Air Mail ability. Every turn, you can look at your top two cards, put one in your hand, one on the bottom of your deck. Very reminiscent of that old Uxie Level X trade-off ability or Poke Power at the time, which was extremely popular, coming back in the form of a Pidgeotto.
So we did actually see Mewtwo and Mew GX in our first round yesterday, right at the beginning of the day. It did not end up winning its match, but the deck is one that we've been wondering, I guess, when it was going to turn up again. And if this deck actually is as good as some players think it is. Some players think that it's maybe a little bit overhyped, but I do think it's a really fascinating deck. The whole point of the deck to discard all of these GX Pokemon because Mewtwo and Mew GX is able to use the attacks of any Pokemon in your discard. So you're playing Solgaleo GX, you're never actually going to play Solgaleo GX.
Right.
You just want access to its attacks.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite decks. It just gives you so many options, that perfection ability on Mewtwo and Mew GX. It takes Pokemon that typically aren't great, tend to be like stage 2 Pokemon that are difficult to get into play.
Dragonite, Altaria.
Yeah, just all these wacky Pokemon that you can now use the great attacks that they have without having to get them into play. And I love that just one Pokemon can use dozens of different attacks. It's going to be fun to watch, but boy, we got an unusual deck from Jimmy Pendarvis, to say the least. We saw a lot of kind of stall control decks do very well in day one of the World Championships, and this is a brand new one. This is going to be, well, a lot of discarding energy from the opponent's Pokemon. That will be his game plan. And we do see the Professor Elm's lecture kicking things off. One great thing about it, it grabs 3 Pokemon with 60 HP or less from your deck, but it does not specify basic Pokemon. And Pidgeotto has 60 HP, so you can grab a couple of Pidgey and a Pidgeotto, and we'll see exactly what Jimmy's game plan is, because this is not a deck we have seen before.
As Zoroark has rotated out of the standard format very recently, we can't trade anymore, but this Pidgeotto with that ability to sort of mini trade every single turn does add up and does provide a much needed consistency to any form of control strategy in this game. But Robin Schulz playing a deck that is very heavy on fire energy, going to be playing Welder to be able to attach multiple energy at a time. So we'll see if Jimmy can restrict that energy resource enough in this matchup. This is certainly a really fascinating one to start the day off with. We've been expecting a lot of Pikarom, a lot of Reshiram and Charizard, a lot of Malamar, and this is way out of left field.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty similar to a Zoroark control deck, I guess. I mean, Jimmy was a player who loved to play Zoroark GX. Played it a lot in the expanded format, the Zoroark GX with Seismitoad EX. And this appears to be a very similar style of deck. We'll see if they have somehow figured out a kind of secret, unusual deck that went under the radar. I did not expect to kick off round one with 3 Pidgey in play, but here we are.
I mean, Jimmy has phenomenal testing groups, players who have so many titles under their belts that you have to imagine they know what they're doing when it comes to deck building, and they've been in situations like this before. But Robin Schulz is our 2018 world champion. He has very recent success under his belt, and you have to assume that he's put some serious time into this Mewtwo and Mew GX, and he believes in it.
Yep, so we do see the Welder gets 2 Fire Energy onto the Mewtwo and Mew GX. It's now 4 energy after the attachment for the turn, and he can start to use just about any attack in that discard pile. He's already got that Solgaleo in there, or does he? No, he's got Reshiram and Charizard GX, going to use that Flare Strike to knock out poor Pidgey. That is one roasted Pidgey, 230 damage.
Kyle, no. The imagery. It's okay.
So now we do see...
We've got many Pidgeys left.
Yeah. We see Jimmy opting to check his deck with the Giant Hearth. There's no fire energy in his deck, but he's still going to discard a card, take a look through, and he does have, there's double Pidgeotto and a custom catcher. He wanted to play down cards from his hand so he could draw some extra cards with that custom catcher, use the first mode of it. And he is off to the races at this point. Several Pidgeotto. And folks, you see that energy on Oranguru. You may think, wow, it's a little early for resource management, but we'll let you in on a secret. That's his plan. It's just a resource management deck. He's got 4 of them in his deck, and he's basically trying to run the opponent out of resources, as you see with that Crushing Hammer. Already flipped heads there, discarding energy off the Mewtwo and Mew GX, and it's going to be a slow grind. It's going to be, can Jimmy run Robin out of resources before Robin is able to collect all 6 of his prize cards? It's going to be tough, but he does have a lot of tech options to stop a deck like Robin's. Cards like Power Plant are going to be very, very important. We do see more Crushing Hammers coming in.
And he does manage to succeed on both of them. So there's 2 energy gone from the Mewtwo and Mew GX. But again, with Welders in the deck, it's rather easy for Robin to be able to power up his Pokemon quickly. And for Robin, he does have 16 total energy in the deck, 11 Fire, 5 Psychic.
Wow.
That's a lot of energy for Jimmy to have to go through.
That's very interesting. We see most of the Mewtwo and Mew decks run Rainbow Energy and a lot of different attackers, but Robin opting for Psychic Energy instead. So that's going to mean he has a lot fewer attackers than what we're used to seeing, but still quite a few can be used with just Fire and Psychic.
Yeah, his deck appears to be a little bit more streamlined than what we were seeing yesterday in round number 1. 4 Mewtwo and Mew, 3 Dedenne GX, just for that ability to draw cards very quickly, 1 Dragonite, 1 Espeon and Deoxys, 1 Jirachi, 1 Latios, and 1 Naganadel. And then the Reshiram and Charizard and the Solgaleo that you've seen already. So there's still quite some variety, but not as much variety in typing.
So here we see the Cherish Ball from Robin. He's going to grab that Latios GX. Now, you typically only use the Tag Purge attack against Tag Team Pokemon. But here, I think he's just going to get that into his discard pile so he can actually just use an attack that does 120 damage every turn. That way he doesn't have to worry about things like not being able to use Flare Strike 2 turns in a row. Just a great little attack he can use, which knocks out basically everything in Jimmy's deck. But yeah, this is going to be a race against Jimmy's inevitable Crushing Hammers. Can Robin rack up enough knockouts before the game gets out of hand?
With that Giant Hearth, Robin's going to have access to energy every single turn, despite Jimmy getting rid of it with the Crushing Hammers. So we have to assume that Robin wants to take a knockout every single turn. 6 knockouts,
Oh, yeah.
he wins the game. Can Jimmy at any point in time prevent a knockout from happening? Can he force Robin to take a turn off, and then can Jimmy capitalize on that?
So you see Robin was debating whether or not to play this Hapu. You look at your top 6 cards, take 2, discard the rest, and you can see the thought process. This could backfire badly if I have to discard important resources. This is the kind of matchup where if you discard 1 too many cards, you could be in some trouble. But Robin deciding, you know what? I think I want to discard bad cards from my deck more than I'm going to worry about losing out on some resources. And you see him having to choose between an energy card and that Marshadow. And I think that Marshadow is going to be one of the most important cards in this matchup. One of the ways that Jimmy is going to attempt to lock Robin out of the game is with that Power Plant Stadium. It will prevent the Perfection ability from being used, which means Mewtwo and Mew GX basically can't attack anymore. And when you have that Marshadow with the Resetting Hole ability, it lets you discard a Stadium card. And at some point, he can just leave it on his bench in preparation for the Power Plant Reset Stamp combo and leave himself open to still attack with Mewtwo and Mew GX. So you can already tell he may not have played this exact matchup before, but he already knows, he's already developed a game plan against it.
I mean, like you were saying, it is somewhat similar to Zoroark control decks of the past.
All right, this is a big discard. We have the Mars. Draw 2 cards, and your opponent has to discard a random card from their hand, and he hits a Fire Energy. That's not bad.
There is that Power Plant.
Yep, there it is.
Getting rid of the Giant Hearth, limiting Robin's access to energy from deck every turn.
Yes, and I think Robin does have another Giant Hearth in hand already, so he will be able to counter that Power Plant, resume attacking with Mewtwo and Mew GX, and go from here. You can see he's not even bothering to bench another Pokemon here. He's saying, look, clearly your deck is not trying to knock me out. I don't need to bench anything, play into things like Custom Catcher.
Yeah,
you can drag out one of my Pokemon.
Being locked into a Pokemon in the active with no energy on it and being unable to move it, there's no point because this Mewtwo and Mew is never going to be knocked out. It's never going to be damaged.
All right, and you can see Jimmy just kind of biding time here. He's falling behind a lot in prize cards, but he is setting up for a massive turn. You can see there is the reset stamp, shuffling Robin's huge hand back into his deck, forcing him to draw just 3 cards. And I think he's going to try to pair this with something like you can play a reset stamp, you can Mars, force your opponent to discard a card from their already low hands, and then do something like play Articuno GX, which has the Cold Crush GX attack. Discard all of the energy, and that's where you can start to lock your opponent out of the game. He's actually kicking things off with Lieutenant Surge's strategy. And then Mars, so he gets to discard a Hapu. All right. So now Robin just 2 cards in hand.
Recycle energy onto the Oranguru and a Cynthia for 6 fresh cards.
And he is allowed to do that thanks to Lieutenant Surge's strategy. He is now allowed to play 3 supporter cards this turn, so he plays the Mars and then Cynthia.
It is including the Lieutenant Surge's strategy as the first supporter card.
Yes. And you see the Articuno GX and Water Energy in hand. He's setting up for next turn. And he got the Power Plant.
That is very bad for Robin. He didn't bench the Marshadow to be able to use that Resetting Hole ability to get rid of the Power Plant, so now all GX Pokemon with abilities do not have them anymore.
And we may see the master plan beginning to unfold.
And this certainly is a strategy that requires you to be behind, and that can be scary for a lot of players who don't like playing from that position. But Jimmy recognizes, obviously, that he's going to have to get things going. It's going to take some time, and as long as Robin doesn't take his 6th prize, he's still in this.
So Robin trying to debate what to do here. He drew his Marshadow, so he can put it down, use that Resetting Hole ability, and get rid of Power Plant and attack for another knockout here. He's trying to figure out, is this the right turn to do it? Can I take a turn off and then hope to draw Dedenne GX or something like that to refill my hand? He decides, no, let's just put on the pressure. Use that resetting hole. Let's knock out Oranguru, go down to 2 prizes, and force Jimmy to have an answer.
Yeah, Jimmy hitting the Hapu with the Mars is quite bad for Robin. He would have liked to have a little bit of draw this turn, a supporter to play it all. But his turn's rather limited, all things considered. Does get to knock out the Oranguru, limit the resource management for the time being. But of course, recycle energy going right back into the hand. So Jimmy is not going to be without it.
All right, so we'll see what's next here. Let's see the recycle energy go on to the Girafarig. This could also be a clever play against the Mewtwo and Mew GX. If you can send some of those attackers from the discard pile into the lost zone, all of a sudden Mewtwo and Mew GX doesn't have anything good to copy. So this could be a way for Jimmy to buy a turn or two.
Yeah, get rid of the Reshiram and Charizard, send the Latios GX to the lost zone, and now you don't even really need that power plant active because Perfection doesn't have anything to copy.
He's going to keep cycling through cards, using that airmail with Pidgeotto, using an Acrobike. And look, he's stockpiling some important cards there. He's got a Crushing Hammer. We see the unusual Chip Ice Axe as well, where you can rearrange the top couple cards of your opponent, or you can look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck and then pick one to put on top of their deck. With resource management and Pidgeotto cycling through your deck, eventually you can reach a state where you can keep using the Ice Axe every turn to keep putting bad cards on top of your opponent's deck and eventually lock them out. But
Another heads.
Big Crushing Hammerheads, discarding the Psychic Energy.
That is 3 for 3 for Jimmy.
I think he missed 1 earlier, but it's still not bad. And he's trying to figure out which Pokemon do I send to the Lost Zone. He decides a Latios GX and a Reshiram and Charizard GX. And now Robin is left with no good attacker in his discard pile. He only needs to do 50 damage times 2 for weakness to knock this thing out, and he just doesn't have anything to attack with. He's got a mysterious treasure in hand, but I don't know if there's anything he can even search for here. I guess he's going to find out. Oh, we do see Espeon and Deoxys, but he doesn't have any Psychic Energy. And we see Dragonite GX, but that doesn't work. Can't even get it into his discard pile.
Need 5 total energy to be able to attack with that. So not quite there.
Just going to grab another Mewtwo and Mew GX. And you can see the tide beginning to change. Every turn that Robin doesn't attack here, it's just one more opportunity for Jimmy to go, okay, get lost, send more Pokemon to your Lost Zone. And eventually this Mewtwo and Mew GX just won't have anything to attack with. You can see the slow game plan coming together.
It seems like Jimmy was expecting to see decks like this Mewtwo and Mew GX specifically, which want to act with their discard pile in mind. And he's got a beautiful counter strategy going here.
He continues to dig through his deck using those Pidgeotto. Those have been super valuable. And there we do see the Chip Ice Axe. You can look at the top 3 cards of his opponent's deck. They're actually 3 pretty good cards. Dedenne GX, Welder, and Cherish Ball. And he decides to put the Cherish Ball on top. And oh, there's another Power Plant. This game is slowly slipping away from last year's world champion.
Started out very well for Robin, but like I was saying before, it's just about that single turn that Jimmy can get him off of his plan, stop him from taking a knockout, and try to take control of that situation. And he's done exactly that.
So now Robin's got to figure out what he wants to do. He's just going to pass the turn. His hand is pretty much useless at this point. He's got a couple Super Scoop Up, which you can technically play and then immediately lose the game if you flip heads. You got another Mewtwo and Mew GX, which is worthless, and that Cherish Ball, which doesn't really help at all either. And you're going to see this deck's game plan come into fruition finally. Falls down 4 prize cards, but as long as your opponent has a prize card. You have not lost the game, and you can win at any point.
He's going to keep using resource management every single turn. Palpad, Titan, Liza, and Mars back into the deck.
It's amazing. It seems like such a simple strategy, but when you see it in action, it's just like, oh, I think at this point, he's just going to win.
It's one that keeps succeeding, though. Very similar to the Zoroark, Quad Zoroark control deck that we saw at North American International Championships last year that sort of took us by surprise. But when you really think about it, consistency is key, and it makes perfect sense. It's just the consistent ability of players to find that next disruption deck that is very impressive.
It's the devastating Pidgeotto control.
Hey, we were making fun of Pidgey, giving him some flack earlier for not being able to measure up to Mewtwo and Mew, but who's laughing now?
Not Robin.
No, I'm sure he's decidedly not finding this situation to be particularly funny.
And here we see the Lieutenant Surge's strategy into Mars. Going to discard a Mewtwo and Mew GX. Nothing important. There aren't really any important cards in Robin's hand, so he doesn't care. But yeah, you'll just see this combo over and over and over. Eventually, Jimmy's just going to whittle down all the cards in Robin's deck. It's going to be a slow, painful process, but eventually he will completely run his opponent out of options and just win the game.
Jimmy's one of the faster players that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think he knows when you're playing this style of deck, you have to play fast, right? The only way you win is when your opponent decks out.
Yeah.
There's not really a way to attack and win with this deck. So you cannot afford to take your time and hem and haw over, oh, I wonder what the right play is. You just need to play fast and hope you're going to get the job done. And that's where practice really comes into play here. This is not a deck you could pick up for the first time and try to win in a tournament setting. You have to play fast. You have to know what you're doing.
It's a deck that has a lot of decision making, but you need to have so much experience with it that those decisions are easy for you to make.
Yep. See a mysterious treasure for Robin, and he's just going to pass the turn.
Oh, dear. A lot of action from Jimmy. Robin, unfortunately, unable to do just about anything. It looks like Jimmy's almost got him completely locked.
Yep, and you see even starting to attach more energy to his active Pokemon. Perhaps starting to use that profound knowledge to get the old 5-hit knockout on Mewtwo and Mew GX.
If he can end this game before Robin decks out, then
may as well.
I mean, might as well.
Right.
Save yourself some time.
It's a super scoop up, which Robin had no intention of playing. And yeah, if you're sitting in Robin's seat, I'm not actually sure what you're supposed to do. He may still think he's got a chance to win this game. You know, he could just think, all right, if I top deck a supporter, I'm good. I can still draw into a counter stadium, get a knockout, go from there. I wonder at what point does he look at this and say, all right, we got to pack this up, move on to another game. And this may be the turning point. We have profound knowledge, 60 damage, and that Mewtwo and Mew GX is now confused. As Robin draws another Cherish Ball. It's not what he needs here.
Just a series of supporterless turns. Obviously, the deck really relying on that welder engine to be able to consistently attach energy and be able to draw through the deck, but
now the double Mars.
Surge's
Surge's strategy into 2 Mars.
So strong to be able to consistently use multiple supporters every turn.
And here's where the clamps are going to be put on the Chip Ice Axe. Puts a useless fire energy on top of Robin's deck.
Yeah, and if you take a look at Robin's deck, he does have those 3 Dedenne GX with Dede Change are sort of acting like supporters, but his actual draw supporter line is quite thin. He has 4 Welders, 3 Hapus, and 3 copies of Titan Liza.
Yep. And he's going to draw fire energy for the turn. Just going to go ahead, attach, pass.
1 more energy, and he can use the attack of Dragonite GX.
Yeah.
But
Well,
of course, with confusion,
and power plant.
not guaranteed. And power plant, he would need to find a counter stadium first.
Yep. So it's really draw a supporter, or you're not going to be attacking anytime soon. See Jimmy playing as fast as he can. Pal pad, shuffle 2 Mars back into the deck. Resource management, chip ice axe.
He has to do so many things every single turn to play his hand ideally, and it does take quite a bit of time. So I'm very impressed by the fact that Jimmy is able to play so cleanly and so quickly.
And we haven't even seen that Articuno GX. That can come out at any point and then discard all the energy off the Mewtwo and Mew GX and pretty much lock this game up.
Another pass from Robin.
A slew of unassuming, colorless Pokemon are slowly taking control of this first round matchup. Pidgeotto or Oranguru, name a more iconic duo.
I'd be interested to see the way that the time played breaks down in this game. Like how much time has Jimmy actually been acting versus how much time has Robin? I think it's very skewed.
I would agree, yes. I want to see like the stats on like how many cards Jimmy has drawn this game. Hundreds.
Lots and lots. With a 60-card deck, the possibilities are endless.
All right, so the
knowledge.
second profound knowledge. Now Mewtwo is a mere 3 hits away from being knocked out.
Another fire energy.
Yeah, I don't even know if you need to attach. It's not really getting you anywhere.
We do see that Espeon and Deoxys GX in the discard pile now, but still only fire energy available to Robin.
All right, so we see Palpad shuffling in those 2 supporters. We see the Airmail getting the Mars.
Hitting the Mysterious Treasure.
Just a crazy combo. His
Palpad
deck
bringing
is
back
just,
the Mars.
He's thinned his deck out completely at this point, and he's able to just Palpad supporters back in, resource management, the Palpad back in, and oh, this is interesting. Dedenne GX, Welder, and a reset stamp. Trying to figure out what card to put on top. He almost gave Robin the Welder, which would have been a horrible mistake because Robin has a fire energy in hand. And I think Jimmy even knew about it. He put a fire on top with the chip ice axe. But gives him the Dedenne GX, which does not work under Power Plant. And this is going to be an interesting spot. So he's got 2 shots to discard the Dedenne, and he doesn't get it.
So if Robin is able to pick up a counter stadium here with that giant Harf, he will be able to use Dede Change.
Oh, all right.
Never mind.
So he's going to put an energy on top, and I think that's just going to lock this game up for good. Jimmy's just going to start, he's going to keep doing the Surge, double Mars, and now Robin's going to be at 0 cards in hand. That's just going to be game over. And now he's even attacking once again with Profound Knowledge. If Jimmy could get rid of his own power plant, he could swoop in with Articuno GX for the win, but he might not even need to do that.
When you can control what your opponent's going to draw every single turn, as well as their hand size, you can ensure that they just will not be able to do anything.
That's right. So you see resource management once again. Robin's going to draw a Mysterious Treasure, and that is probably going to wrap things up.
Lieutenant Surge and Mars.
It's the fire energy, Palpads him back in, Airmails, gets the other Mars, discards his last card. Resource management once again. The cycle continues.
Chip Ice Axe.
Resource management. I've seen Oranguru would be such a powerful card in many, many different decks.
I mean, Jimmy really, he only has 3 cards in his deck.
Yeah.
That's all he's working with
Oh,
right now,
super
but
scoop up heads. Robin successfully concedes.
He successfully loses himself the game. But that was a game that was gone a very long time ago. Jimmy was able to get to every single turn just having the 3 cards in his deck that he wanted. He was going to Pal Pad back supporters. He could resource management in the Pal Pad, the Lieutenant Surge, the Mars, Chip Ice Axe to control what Robin would draw off the top of his deck. And that was a slow walk to a loss for Robin. And now he's got about 20 minutes on the clock. He would have to pick up 2 wins very, very quickly, which this is certainly a deck that's capable of doing that. The lock for Jimmy took 4 prizes to actually get into place. But it seems like once it was in place, Robin was just completely incapable of preventing it. There was nothing he could do.
Yeah, everything was going well until, that power plant started to stick. That is one of the most effective counters to the Mewtwo and Mew GX deck. That stadium that just basically says you only have 1 attack now, your GX attack, and you can only use that once in a game. So at some point, Mewtwo and Mew just stopped being able to attack, and when you pair Power Plant with Reset Stamp, mess with your opponent's hand, it becomes even more difficult to start attacking. I think in order to win, Robin's just going to need to, kind of do what he did last game, start attacking turn 2, get knockouts every turn, and really hope that Jimmy stumbles, or when Jimmy eventually does play that Power Plant, Reset Stamp, that he is able to keep drawing supporter cards and things like a Stadium and a Dedenne GX to keep drawing cards. Some combination of Jimmy missing a step here or Robin continuing to draw well when the time is right.
Yeah, what went very right for Jimmy that game was the Professor Elms very early on to get those Pidgeotto setups to be able to airmail every single turn. Once he's doing that multiple times per turn, he's thinning his deck by 4 to 6 cards every single turn, and that is what really was allow him to get through all 60 cards and be able to resource management and Pal Pad exactly what he wanted every single turn. So if he's not able to set up the Pidgeotto as quickly this game, then Robin will just have more time. But unfortunately, it's going to come down to Robin hoping that it doesn't happen. There's nothing that he can do other than taking a knockout every single turn to prevent those Pidgeotto from being set up.
Absolutely. So we'll see if our reigning world champion can figure out a way to combat this brand new deck being brought here at the World Championships. The Pidgeotto control deck. We'll see what happens here in game number 2. We have a similar start to what we had in the first game. We reveal Mewtwo and Mew GX and Pidgey.
It's an ideal start for Robin, and Pidgey was an absolute force to be reckoned with in the previous game.
Yep.
We are going to see a Welder attaching 2 fire energies and drawing 3 cards right off the bat.
Yeah, excellent start here. Always love to start off with a Welder and 2 fire energy. Gets a 3rd energy down. He's even got Mysterious Treasure if he wants to go search out another Pokemon. This is all Robin can really ask for. He needs to just attack, 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 and hope it works.
Crushing Hammer does succeed, and there goes that Psychic Energy right away.
Yeah, and he needs that to stop happening.
Yeah.
The hammer thing. Yeah.
It's not great.
Yeah. It's
not
not
great
cool,
for Robin.
no?
Kind of gets to you after a while. You're like, keeps
Yeah.
bringing the hammer, he's flipping a lot of heads.
Yep, but here we see another Pidgey. We'll see if he can pull off that Professor Elm's lecture. As you said, that was a huge first turn play. It's probably the key to getting this deck up and running. And Jimmy is running pretty much maximum consistency. Pokegear, Acrobike, for Professor Elm's lecture. Pretty much the maximum ways to find Professor Elm's lecture on your first turn. Because when you do pull it off, your setup gets a lot better, but oh boy.
That's a miss for Jimmy. Does not find the Professor Elms to use this turn, so it's just going to be a pair of Pidgey.
This is the kind of thing Robin needs to see. And he's going to grab a Dedenne GX off of this Cherish Ball. And I think he's going to want to get an attacker into the discard pile so he can start taking down these Pidgey before they evolve into Pidgeotto. We'll see what his attacker of choice will be.
Mysterious Treasure, the Dragonite GX into the discard.
Oh, Espeon and Deoxys GX. Those Pidgey have 50 HP each. If he finds a Psychic Energy, he can use the GX attack and just win the game.
So Robin's got a plan. He is going to Dead A change. He is going to try to find that Psychic Energy. He's only playing 5 of them. 1 of them is already in the discard.
This is huge. All right, he's got a Hapu. He can dig through 6 cards. Then he can Dead A change for 6 more cards. He's going to be seeing a lot of cards here. Can he find the crucial Psychic Energy to win this game on the second turn?
This game could be over very fast, and that's exactly what Robin needs to be able to fit a 3rd game in as well.
And this all comes down to a deck building decision as well. There are 2 different Pidgey available to use in the standard format. One has 50 HP, has that collect attack. One has 60 HP, which has a pretty much useless attack, and Jimmy opting to play the ones with collect. And this may backfire here. If those both had 60 HP, there would be no danger here, but because they have 50 HP each, this cross-division GX attack could be a game winner.
10 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon in any way you like. 5 and 5 will win Robin the game. If he can get the Espeon and Deoxys into the discard pile and find a single Psychic Energy, Mewtwo and Mew GX will be able to take a double knockout and send this match to game 3.
Oh boy, this is a big sweat. We got
This is quite cool.
one Dead A change for 1 Psychic Energy, and that Crushing Hammer was also huge.
It was very necessary. This game would have just been over had it missed.
All right, here we go. Dead A change for 6 cards. Does he find the Psychic Energy to win the game?
Another Dedenne GX as well. There it is.
He hits it.
Game 2.
Wow, cross division GX. And
Okay.
turn to win for Robin Schulz.
So Robin does have some insulation against a weaker start from Jimmy. If there's no Professor Elm's lecture, like you just saw there, he has a way to take advantage of that. Which means game number 3 could very dramatically go either way. Obviously, Jimmy is going to be able to go first this time.
Yep. And this is always the risk you take when you play a slow control deck like Jimmy is playing. He dominated the first game. He took a long time to win because he really can't win very quickly. He can't take knockouts. He has to slowly drain his opponent's resources. And when you can set up every game, it's great. You know, you win a long game. Typically, the second game doesn't finish, and then you end up with a win for the round. But when you draw a poor hand at any point in the series, you can't really win the match. You just don't have enough time to complete 2 full games with a deck this slow. So what tends to happen is these decks can end up tying a lot of rounds, which is very unfortunate, but that's kind of the risk you take when you play this kind of a deck. You just understand it.
Well, the hero of the previous game, that Espeon and Deoxys GX, is prized for Robin in game number 3, so we're not going to be seeing a repeat of that very fast win.
And once again, no Professor Elm's lecture start for Jimmy. He's just got a Mew in play.
That bench barrier ability.
Yeah, he needs to find a basic.
Or he could very much just lose this game on the back of Welder, an energy attachment, and a Pokemon in the discard pile for Robin.
Yeah, he does have a power plant out, so it's a little more difficult for that
gotta have
Mewtwo
that
Mew
giant
GX.
Parf or the resetting whole Marshadow.
But all he's got is a Girafarig. And that's going to be it. So if Robin can pull off a turn 1 attack, start to put on the pressure.
There's that giant heart, so Perfection is active, as well as Dead A change.
Okay, we'll probably see him Cherish Ball here for Solgaleo GX. It's the easiest thing he can attack with in his deck. Dead A change it into the discard pile. And just try to put the pressure on. As you said, the Espeon and Deoxys GX is in his prize card, so he won't have access to it right away. Perhaps he could take it out of his prizes if he gets a knockout here.
He could.
That could be huge. You know, if next turn Jimmy goes, put 2 Pidgey down, he can go, oh, knock out 2 Pidgey and really cripple this engine of this deck.
Prizes are generally taken in order. Usually you like bottom left and go up to the top. And I believe the Espeon and Deoxys was on the bottom. So it would be one of the first prizes taken typically.
We'll find out.
We'll have to see. Yeah, Turbo Strike. Just 2 colorless for 120 damage.
Yeah, he needs to find a Welder He's going to go for this Dead change, getting rid of 3 Super Scoop Up. Doesn't really need those. He's going to draw 6 cards. Does he find a Welder? If he does, he has Giant Hearth to go find those fire energy.
Oh, that's a lot of energy.
Oh, boy. It sure is. Okay, so he does not find the Welder this turn.
He does hit a Hapu.
Jimmy gets to breathe in a sigh of relief. This is honestly probably the difference between a win and a loss here. If Robin is able to get the knockout, get the Espeon and Deoxys out of his prize cards, he can then parlay that into knocking out multiple Pidgey and perhaps prevent Jimmy from ever setting up. But without getting that prize, I think Jimmy's just going to be free to set up. Did you see the Hapu? See if there's anything. I'm not sure if there's anything that can really attack for 1 energy in this deck. Nothing that comes to mind right away.
I don't believe there is.
And he's going to look at which 2 cards to take off his top 6. His hand is just all energy. Just energy and a Giant Hearth to get more energy.
He doesn't want to get rid of the energy. Those are going to be pretty necessary when the Crushing Hammers start to come out.
And that's got to be a disappointing turn for Robin, but for Jimmy, you're probably celebrating.
There you go.
Nothing happened there, and now you can Professor Elm's lecture. The swarm of Pidgey has begun.
The flock is in play. And there was an opportunity there for Robin to sort of do what he did last game, spiral the advantage in his favor, be able to take a very fast knockout, but just didn't hit it. It was all riding on that Welder. And now we see Power Plant back in play. Perfection and Dead Change are both inactive now. So I believe there is another Giant Hearth in hand for Robin.
Yep. Hey, look, he drew Welder.
But is it too little too late?
It might be. I'm not sure how strong Jimmy's hand is. I didn't see any Pidgeotto in there, so there's a good chance he might not even get one out next turn. But let's see what Robin decides to do here. He does need to get rid of the Power Plant, play down that Stadium from his hand so he can attack with the Mewtwo and UGX. And we'll probably see him Mysterious Treasure for another Mewtwo and MewGX so he can Turbo Strike with Solgaleo GX, get some energy onto another Mewtwo and MewGX, or perhaps something that isn't affected by Power Plant.
Yep, he's just going to go ahead and search out that Latios GX. Try to get something going that can attack even if Robin misses on getting that Power Plant out of play on a future turn.
And oh wow, he actually opts to discard a Psychic Energy to the Giant Hearth. That's surprising to me. It seems like that's one of his most important resources, to be able to use things like Latios GX's attack. So I really started to struggle in the first game once he ran out of Psychic Energy. But you can Turbo Strike them onto the bench, so that does make a lot of sense. I'm used to it just getting Fire Energy in this deck, so I'm used to only playing Rainbow and Fire. But hey, you can get any basic energy.
Yeah, and he does have that method of returning them from the discard, so it's not, they're not gone permanently.
So Power Plant is gone. We do see the Turbo Strike, that Perfection ability allowing it to use Solgaleo GX's attack, Turbo Strike, 120 damage. Attach 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to one of your benched Pokemon. So now Robin, oh, he did get the Espeon and Deoxys out of his prizes, but is it too late? There's one Pidgeotto. One Pidgeotto in play.
Looks like the next prize he'll be taking is another Giant Hearth as well. So if he can get another knockout, then he will have an answer for the next Power Plant.
So something we could see, if you get enough energy onto Mewtwo and MewGX, you can hit the bonus for Espeon and Deoxys GX, which bumps up the number of damage counters from 10 to 20, which means you can knock out 3 Pidgeotto at once. And that may be the game plan Robin is going for. He's now at 5 prize cards, If he can welder, well, he's got Giant Hearth out there already. He can search for a couple fire energy. He can welder, attach the psychic, and I think that's enough to get him to that bonus and just completely wipe out all those Pidgey. That is one way to win.
That's a heck of a way to win. It's a bit bad for the Pidgeys.
Yeah.
Pidgeotto's having a rough day, but I mean, the fact that Robin has chosen to put that card into his deck to be able to have the ability to knock out several basic Pokemon at one time and sort of escalate the single prize per turn strategy to something that goes much faster is really smart. And very necessary in this matchup, to be perfectly honest. It looked like after game number 1, we weren't going to have time for game number 2 even. And it looks like we might see a conclusion to game 3 at this point.
And it's going to be a close finish. We do see Girafarig. He's going to use that Get Lost attack, send Solgaleo GX and a Mewtwo and Mew to the Lost Zone. And this is going to be the turn. Is it possible to use that Espeon and Deoxys GX to get multiple knockouts this turn? There are now 3 Pidgeotto in play for Jimmy, so this is, oh boy, it's a lot of airmail being delivered every turn. You see Robin trying to debate what order to do things in. He's going to send the Espeon and Deoxys to the discard pile. He doesn't want to bench it because it's got a big retreat cost, doesn't want it to be a liability on his bench. But that means he can use the GX attack with Mewtwo and Mew GX. If we can take a look at Espeon and Deoxys GX, that GX attack is probably going to get used this turn, and it's going to be a game changer.
When you hit that energy bonus, instead of spreading 10 damage counters, you get to spread.
You see Robin looking at it, saying, okay, how much energy do I need to get the extra effect here? I'm like, okay, told her.
Triple check.
I believe it's 3 extra energy, and there we have it.
6 exactly. Go ahead and Cherish Ball.
And this is probably the best way to stop this deck. If you can cut off the airmail, they can't keep cycling through their deck. And it's just, you're going to start attacking, and they're not going to find all those cards they need to keep locking you out of the game. And there we do see it.
That's going to be it.
Triple knockout on those 3 Pidgeotto, 3 prize cards, and putting 2 extra damage counters on that Oranguru for good measure. But Jimmy is going to fight back. We see the reset stamp, forcing Robin to shuffle in his hand and draw 2 cards. But unfortunately for Jimmy, he's already used, I think, both of his power plants. They've already been countered. He doesn't have a power plant to combo with this reset stamp. So Robin is still going to be able to attack with his Pokemon here. I don't know if Jimmy can stop Robin from just taking knockouts turn after turn.
It's looking like he's not going to be able to. His hand size is quite small. He's got Mars to try and buy some time, make it so that Robin can't do much, but he doesn't have his own draw supporters. That fire energy is
this is a big
not
crushing
terribly
hammer.
Consequential. Can he get rid of the Psychic?
He can. All right. So you're going to get rid of that Psychic energy. Use the Giant Hearth to just discard the Professor Elm's lecture.
And he does actually have the Tate and Liza to be able to draw 5.
Yeah, he's already used Lieutenant Surge's strategy, so he can Mars and Tate and Liza. I think either this turn or the next turn, Jimmy needs to find that Articuno GX and a water energy so he can discard all the energy from his opponent's active Pokemon and hope that it buys him enough time to at least survive this game.
Yeah, this is not going to be a win for Jimmy, but it's the difference between a loss and a draw right now.
All right, so potentially big 5 cards here for Jimmy Pendarvis. I think I saw the Articuno GX, but not a water energy.
There are very few water energy in the deck, but the Articuno is there. You see one of the water energy off of the Pokegear.
Yep, and we see Cynthia for next turn. So next turn, he might have to go for that play. I don't believe Robin can win on his next turn.
3 total water energy in the deck for Jimmy, as well as 1 recycle.
You're going to see
So
the
at the bare
chip,
minimum.
the old Chip Ice Axe. Three not great options.
Yeah, those are all quite useful for Robin. The Psychic Energy enables attacks. Dead A Change can find more Psychic Energy, and Titan Liza can do the same.
Yeah, Dead NA, I think, is the last card I would put on top of your opponent's deck in this situation. I think it's got to be the Psychic Energy. Yeah, you don't want to give him a fresh hand. He's only got one card. And all right. So we could see either a get lost from Draft Rig, or he could retreat, return the Recycle Energy to hand, and attach to Oranguru and use Resource Management this turn. He's trying to figure out, should I get rid of your attacker in the discard pile, or should I manage some of my resources? Looks like he's eyeing up the get lost. And nope, actually going to retreat. The Recycle Energy comes back to hand, and he's going to Resource Management 3 cards from his discard pile back into his deck. Needs to get Power Plant and Reset Stamp back in there.
As well as that Chip Ice Axe it looks like he's favoring. No, I'm going to go with Acrobike and 2 copies of Power Plant.
All right, and the clock is ticking. Now under a minute for Robin Schulz. His hand just 2 Psychic Energy. He's got to take a look at what attacks he can use here. Not a whole lot, but he can use the Tag Purge with the Latios GX on the bench. This is an interesting situation. So if you knew your opponent was playing Articuno GX, you might actually consider retreating into Latios GX and attacking with that, but it actually can't attack because of its ability preventing it from attacking. So
Yep.
that doesn't work. So you just got to attack and hope that this Mewtwo and Mew GX can go the distance, as our timer has hit 0. And we will enter extra turns here.
Well, it is the case that if Jimmy does find Power Plant to get rid of Giant Hearth and shut down abilities of GX Pokemon, then Latios GX will be able to attack.
Is it going to be enough? I think Jimmy needs to go for that Articuno GX play. He needs to find a Water Energy to discard all the energy from his opponent's Pokemon. And then it would be a big enough Pokemon to withstand an attack from the Latios GX. That's probably the only way he can buy time at this point.
3 total in the deck. I vaguely recall 1 being in prizes, possibly.
Yeah, I think so. I've seen him find it off the Pokegear a couple times.
Yeah. So we know it's there.
All right, here is Articuno GX. Its ability, Legendary Ascent, allows it to swoop in.
And this is a very important 6 cards off of Cynthia.
This is it. It's Water Energy or bust.
If Jimmy can find the Water Energy, he can discard all energy off of both active Pokemon with Cold Crush GX, which would lock that Mewtwo and Mew GX into the active, preventing Robin from doing much of anything.
6 card, no. Doesn't find it.
He's got Acrobike.
Oh boy. Does he have another one? Because no Water Energy there. Oh, he does find Power Plant. Yet another way to prevent that Mewtwo and Mew GX from attacking.
Can you use that Pal Pad? Just put both Cynthias back in the deck. Jimmy's not happy with what he has access to right now.
Yeah, and you see the lack of Pidgeotto coming into play. With no airmail, he's struggling to find the cards he needs. This is down to the wire. Jimmy cannot win the game at this point, but he can stop his opponent from doing so. And he's going to take a look. What Pokemon do you have access to? Is that big Dragonite GX in your discard pile? Do I have to worry about that? Answer is no. There's not really any good attacker. Nothing that can knock out Articuno yet. Big Crushing Hammer flip. And it is heads.
Jimmy
And,
better go buy a lotto ticket because his heads flipping ability is strong.
and I think he makes an excellent play, discarding energy from the Latios GX. He's saying, you know what, this Power Plant, it needs to stick. So if that's the case, I need to stop that Latios GX from attacking. This is a huge top deck for Robin. He finds a Tate and Liza. He finds a supporter card. All right, if he can draw into, oh, he's got a tough decision as well. So he's got Mysterious Treasure. He can go find the Marshadow with the Resetting Hole ability and get rid of the power plant. And then if he can find simply Reshiram and Charizard GX, he can Flare Strike and win this game, take round number 1. I think he has identified this is his best chance to win this game. Mysterious Treasure for the excellent Marshadow with that Resetting Hole ability. It's a searchable way to counter a power plant.
Identify that the Reshiram and Charizard is in the deck. If he can find it, he can bench it, and he has the necessary energy for Flare Strike.
This is it. He needs to find Reshiram and Charizard GX or Dragonite GX and a way to discard it. He can also get Naganadel GX and a way to discard it. Any of those big attacks will allow him to take the final knockout and win, but he's got to find something.
5 cards.
Cherish Ball will do it. All right, 5 cards. Does our world champion find what he needs? I think he got it. We have Dedenne GX. He discards the Naganadel GX, draws 6 cards, and now he can copy that attack, do 170 damage anywhere, and Robin Schulz takes round number 1, coming back down a game. Wow, that was amazing to watch.
What an impressive performance. And you can certainly see why Robin Schulz is our reigning Masters Division World Champion, because even after game number 1 went so wrong for him, he was able to really keep his cool and understand his win condition, which in both games was being able to get ahead with that Espeon and Deoxys GX, using that GX attack.